Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Chad Daybell calls Lori a goddess. Lori is disappointed not to get Charles Vallow's life insurance. Chad calls a funeral home, and there's some reason why Chad Daybell compares himself to Harry Potter. You will be able to answer that question by the end of tonight's live stream. We got so much inside information today presented and yesterday through testimony at trial. So what I want to do tonight is start to build out our timeline because I don't want us to get so far behind. I want us to be able to put stuff into it. So I want to focus today on the timeline and the communications between Chad and Lori, their Google searches. It's not just Chad and Lori either. It's also a group of people who were part of a group led by Chad. Chad Daybell, of course, is accused of triple murders, of murdering JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, age 7 and age 17, and also of murdering his own wife, Tammy, of 29 years. So I want to talk about all that tonight and just start to fill out our timeline. And we'll have to add a lot more stuff. I'm not going to be able to cover everything tonight. If we have time, and I honestly don't think we will tonight, I would also like to cover the very cryptic and disturbing blessing that Chad gave to Alex. I would like to cover that if we possibly can get to it. So we'll just see how quickly things go. So I want to welcome a special welcome to our first 5 who commented in the chat. Loves My Angel 1, Beth A, Michael Lalonde, Cognac Hobo, and Elizabeth. Welcome to all of you, and a special hello, shout out to them. So let's take a look. I'm going to go ahead and add the timeline that I've been creating to the stage so we can take a look at it to get, nope, let's try again. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I want to talk through what some of the things we've learned are, and I'll kind of explain to you how I have this set up. So you'll see as I scroll through that I have some dates in green. Those are important, pivotal anchor dates, I call them. So on July 11th, Alex Cox shoots and kills Charles Vallow and claims it's self-defense. Now, we know Lori Vallow Daybell is now in Arizona facing charges in connection with that shooting of Charles Vallow, her third husband. The next green date I put in is the last date on which there's proof of life for Tylee Ryan. And we'll add a lot of stuff around here. The blue I want you to ignore for tonight. These are things we know from Lori's trial, but what I want to focus on tonight is the red. So let's keep going. On the 23rd of September, all of this is 2019, Melanie Gibb and David Warwick said they woke up and JJ was gone. Lori said he was being a zombie and that Alex Cox took him. So that is the last proof of life date for JJ Vallow. Then 10/2/2019, October 2nd, someone shot at Brandon Boudreaux. As he was driving home and nearing his house, he saw that the rear window of a parked Jeep rolled down, a gun with a silencer stuck out of the window, and someone fired at him and hit his vehicle. We now know Lori Vallow Daybell is accused in that shooting. Brandon Boudreaux was her nephew-in-law, and police say in Arizona that she tried to kill him through using Alex. Alex Cox was the person who shot. Then on the 9th of October, same year, someone shot at Tammy Daybell in her driveway, did not hit her. And then on the 19th of October, Tammy Daybell died. Chad says it was in her sleep early on the 19th. That was the day on which she passed. On November 5th, you can see how short a time that is from October now just to November. Chad and Lori are already married. They marry in Hawaii. And then finally, Alex Cox dies on 12/12/2019. I think that was my last screen. It is. So let's get back to the top. So those are what I'm going to call the anchor dates. And I want to build everything around that so we can really understand what exactly it is. Like what exactly the emails or the text messages, how do they fit into when everything happened during the course of this case? So let's get started. And I want to talk about some Google searches that Chad did. He, according to law enforcement, all the way back on November 2019, he was searching Ned Snyder, 1996, and I'll explain why this is significant. Death, Louisiana, Ned Snyder, Louisiana, born 1951, died 1996, bodies possessed after original occupant dies. He also searched Ned Schneider, Louisiana, obituary 1997, and found one, Ned Schneider. So, and here's why this is important, because the name that Chad and Lori gave to the supposed evil spirit who occupied Charles Vallow, Lori's third husband, was Ned Schneider. What this does is put their affair, and not just their affair, but their discussion about the need to destroy this, quote, evil spirit in Lori's husband all the way back to 2019. And so, I say 2019. I think I meant 2018. I have to change that. Let's change it now before I forget. Oh, shoot, this is PDF. I can't change it here. Anyway, you have it in the right order. It was supposed to be in 2018. So all the way back to the beginning of the year, you see Chad is actually searching for Ned Schneider, who is the person he says occupied Charles Vallow. Why does that matter? Charles Vallow, in just a few months in July, is going to wind up dead. He's going to be shot by Alex Cox, Lori's brother. And that's especially important because remember, as we have been told over and over again in the trial, Chad Daybell is not charged in connection with the death of Charles Vallow. That was Lori's third husband. She is being charged with that. Alex Cox is no longer alive, but presumably would have been charged with that, but that's not happening because instead, because he's not alive. But for Chad, was there any connection to the death of Charles Vallow? Because the prosecution believes, yes, one of the witnesses actually said he had recommended that Chad Daybell be charged in connection with Charles's death. But that didn't happen in Arizona. The Arizona authorities elected not to charge Chad, at least for now. And so right now he's not charged. But this is a connection between this belief that Charles Vallow was occupied by an evil spirit. And ultimately, Chad and Lori both taught that the only way to rid a body of an evil spirit was to kill the body after it had become a zombie. So at that point, there was no more hope. So let's keep going to March of 2019, where Chad searched June 26th star sign, are Cancer and Leo compatible? May 4th sign, Taurus and Leo compatible. The reason that's important is because June 26th was the birthday of Lori Vallow. May 4th was the birthday of his actual wife, Tammy Daybell. And so Chad is searching around his compatibility with the two of them, thus indicating again that there's a connection, a romantic connection of some type between the two of them. Chad now acknowledges and did acknowledge in opening statement that he had an affair with Lori, but we don't really know when exactly it started. This is some clues. Here are some clues we have all the way back to March of 2019. Then in April 21st, there was an email connected to Lori. In other words, it doesn't say Lori Vallow at, but it was connected to her. She had opened the account or otherwise was connected to it. And this email wrote Chad and invited him to speak at a youth conference in Houston, which happened to be where Lori was living at the time. And prosecutors say this was an attempt to hide the fact that he was going to go see Lori romantically, even though he was married to Tammy, and he wouldn't have to tell her what was happening. So then at some point in the month of March 2019, Lori and Alex messaged about Ned, and apparently Ned is dead. And Lori says, it's not Ned, it's a new one. So Lori is messaging her brother about this evil spirit, Ned Schneider, who had occupied her third husband. And apparently they prayed it out. They did castings to try to remove the evil spirit. And Lori says, well, it's not Ned, it's a new one. And they had a new name that it was either Garrett or Hiplos. And we'll hear about Hiplos again throughout the trial. Then on April 21st, there was an email, again, connected to Lori that wrote, oh, already said that, May 5th, Chad Daybell searches malachite, eBay malachite jewelry. Now, the reason why that really matters is because Chad Daybell could have just been searching Lori's favorite stone or something like that, or for that matter, some stone he was going to give, a ring he was going to give to his actual wife, Tammy. But that's relevant, the witness told us, because malachite is actually the kind of jewelry that Chad and Lori exchanged when they got married in Hawaii. So all the way back to May, Chad is searching for malachite jewelry. The insinuation is he was thinking about marrying Lori. Now, at this point, her husband's still alive. His wife is still alive. Both of her children are still alive. But he's searching for jewelry in her favorite stone, in a stone that they believed had spiritual significance. Then on May 22nd, Lori it's so frustrating. Zulema retypes itself on my computer to Ulema. I don't know, is that like a name? But anyway, that's Zulema. Lori messaged Zulema. We will hear more about Zulema through the trial, but she was one of the followers in the group that Chad and Lori led, and especially Chad. And Lori messaged Zulema saying, Hiplos, that was Hiplos, not hippos. Anyway, that darn spell check. Okay, Hiplos is a level 4. This is all so complicated. I know I'm like throwing stuff at you. Like, what? How do I handle this? Okay, the evil spirits had levels. Level 1 being not so bad, level 5 being really bad. Well, Hiplos was a level 4. And that would be Charles Vallow was a level 4. They discussed hovering over his truck, which we will hear later in the trial, they believe was a threatening thing, trying to cause his truck to wreck so he would get hurt, something like that. And Zulema said she had instructions to rip, tar, or burn the aura of Hiplos, not hippos, and they want to let the body energy out. All of this, the prosecution is going to say, is starting to talk about killing Charles Vallow. This is going to lead up to their argument that Lori knew in advance that they were going to kill Charles Vallow. It wasn't self-defense, like Alex Cox said. And they're also going to say Chad knew because of all this discussion within the group. Then on June 1st, Chad searched Hiplos on Google. On June 3rd, he texted Lori, Charles, the actual husband, texted Lori. He had discovered that she was having an affair with Chad Daybell. And he texts her and says she has until noon to explain. He puts that out several different times, or he's going to text and email Chad's wife, Tammy, and says, there really is something wrong with you. You have to be exposed for what you are. And he tells her lying has become second nature for her and that she blames him for everything. Then at some time around this point, but I didn't get the exact date, Chad texts Lori that he's going to Idaho and he's going to tell Tammy about the affair. Lori says Tammy's Lori's friend and won't listen to him. Now, we got echoes of that. If any of you watched the sentencing hearing for Lori Vallow Daybell, one of the things she talked about was her friend, Tammy Daybell, which was just chilling. Not only had she had an affair with Tammy Daybell's husband, Chad, but in addition, she had just been convicted of the murder of Tammy Daybell. And she was saying that she was calling Tammy a friend. So on June 29th, Charles wrote Tammy, finally did write Tammy Daybell, saying he had vital and disturbing information about their spouses. He wasn't more specific than that. In another email, he then told her more specifically, they're having an affair. And I have definite proof. If you care to see it, contact me. But law enforcement is not sure whether Tammy ever saw this. It was sent over the summer to her email at school, and they aren't sure, did she ever get it? Did it go to spam filter? Did it get lost? Or did she see it and just decide to pay no attention to it? We don't fully know the answer to that. Charles also texted, again, Lori's actual third husband, not Chad. Charles texts Lori that he emailed Tammy and their game is up. So all around this, you can see that the noose is tightening for Chad and Lori. They're about to be found out. Tammy is about to be told. And the prosecution believes all of that played into what happened next to Charles Vallow. So at some point in this, Charles wrote Chad, either you or Lori need to tell me what's going on or this will be exposed for all to see. And does your wife know you have several of Lori's dance videos? She sent them to you at your request in January. Explain how that is in any way appropriate. So then on the 9th, Chad Daybell searched when you surprise someone with accusations, which is a strange and sort of unexplained search. Unless he takes the stand, I think it will remain unexplained. It's just not clear what he meant by that. So by this point, we are just 2 days before Charles Vallow being shot by Alex Cox, Lori's brother. And as we count down, Charles and Lori wrote about a fake that talked to each other about the fake letter inviting Chad to come down. And Charles basically was saying he knew that this was fake. He knew that Chad was coming down really to see Lori. On the 9th, Lori wrote Alex, who ultimately shot Charles, and says, so the plot thickens. Call me when you can. And also said that her brother Adam, not Alex, but Adam, she had 2 brothers, and Adam, as well as her husband, Charles, were planning an intervention. They were going to do something to say, Lori, you are crazy and off the rails, but that never happened. And Lori also wrote Alex saying, thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Then at 7:30 a.m., this is the day that Charles Vallow is going to be shot. Charles Vallow comes to Lori Vallow's house to pick up his son. They share a son. They adopted JJ. He's now JJ Vallow, and he's staying. JJ, a special needs autistic child, is staying with Lori. So Charles is coming over to pick him up. And at that point, at 7:30 a.m., Adam Cox, not Alan, not Alex, not the one who's about to shoot Charles, but Adam, the brother, and Charles text about how they're concerned. Alex is at Lori's house. They're both nervous about this situation. And sure enough, at the house, Alex Cox shot and killed Charles Vallow. He claimed it was self-defense. And for a time, authorities believed that, and they did nothing about that. Now, there were 2 more text messages from Chad that day that were relevant. The first was he wrote Zulema saying, it's crazy about Charles, but such a relief. And later that day, I guess it wasn't a text, it was a phone call. There's actually a recording, we may play that at some point, where Chad calls a funeral home to make arrangements and does some strange stuff. He lies, for example, about the name, spelling of the name. He says it's his uncle. It wasn't his uncle. It was his his girlfriend's husband who had died, but he says it was his uncle. He's very specific. They want the body cremated, and he spells the name Daybell, D-A-B-A-L, not D-A-Y-B-E-L-L, which is how he normally spells it. Then on the 18th, Lori learned that Brandon changed, still July of 2019, that Brandon had changed the life insurance beneficiary, and she's not going to get the money. I said Brandon. I didn't mean that. I meant Charles. I have to prove this. Charles had changed the life insurance beneficiary. So in other words, from this email, from this text message, we learned that Lori assumed she was going to be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy for Charles Vallow. So when he was shot, since she was caring for their mutual child, JJ, she thought she would be the beneficiary of the life insurance. She learned that it had been changed, that she was not the beneficiary anymore. Instead, the sister was. So Charles had changed it to being his sister. Here's Chad's response to that. I love you. This is terrible, but it's probably another step in bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon. It will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest. Lori informs him he changed it in March, so it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. So all of these, you can see why the prosecution believes these sorts of messages suggest Chad was not particularly cut up over the death of Charles. And in fact, they were, both he and Lori were talking about interested in wanting the life insurance proceeds, and that it was disappointing for Lori not to be able to get that. Then July 26th, and here, the answer to the Harry Potter one I mentioned to you. This is a text from Chad to Lori. He says, I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks, I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover. But then I have to return to my place under the stairs feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming. So lots of stuff packed into that. First of all, that really implies that Tammy, as well as his entire family of 5 children, amounts to the Dudleys. They've trapped him under the stairs in this suffocating small space where he's unable to be himself, to be with his goddess, meaning Lori Vallow. And the fact that he says, I sense permanent freedom is coming, is difficult to explain. What did he mean by that? How is he going to get permanent freedom? Well, one of the things that he would talk about to numerous people is he was convinced and told numerous people that he believed Tammy was going to die early, die young. He didn't say that he was going to kill her, but he did tell people that she was going to die young. So then on July 26th, Lori Vallow, an email connected with her, searched for sell service dog and service dogs for sale. Probably one of the saddest searches I have ever heard of in my life, because what actually happened is, as I mentioned, JJ was autistic and had a service dog, special needs dog, to be with him, his companion. Remember that JJ has just lost his father, Charles Vallow. And now Lori actually sells his service dog. And she did that. She sold the service dog in Arizona right before she picked up and moved to Rexburg, Idaho, to be near Chad Daybell. So that actually happened. And Lori also searched a month later wedding bands made of malachite. Now, at this point, her husband, Charles Vallow, is in fact dead. But Tammy Daybell is not dead. As we saw, that didn't happen for another couple of months. And right now, Lori is already searching wedding bands made of malachite, which is exactly what the two of them, Chad and Lori, exchanged on the Hawaii beach as they got married. Now, they then picked up and moved to Rexburg, as I said, to be near Chad. And on September 3rd, after that move, Alex Cox, the brother, also moved with Lori and set the Wi-Fi password as too many kids. And Lori wrote funny. The prosecution thinks, okay, what this means is that she was tired of the children. They were in the way. The prosecution says the reason the children were killed is because they were encumbrances as Lori and Chad headed toward their glorious destiny of leading the 144,000 in the final days. And if it hadn't been for those children, they would have been free to go ahead and lead. And it was the children who were hanging them up and keeping them from getting and doing what they needed to do. It was just 5 days later that we have the final proof of life of Tylee Ryan. And we learned last week about the horrendous finding of her body burned in Chad's backyard, or backfield, as he likes to call it. Then, as I said, JJ disappears just another couple of weeks later. It was the 8th when Tylee disappeared, last seen. It was the 23rd of September when JJ was last seen. So those too many kids, those encumbrances, both in those last days turned dark, became zombies, and both disappeared forever. Their bodies were found buried in Chad's backyard. Then someone shot at Brandon Boudreaux but missed We'll hear more about that later. I don't want to go too much into detail. It's honestly, well, it is its own case. So we will wait for that. Then on the 9th, as I said, someone shot at Tammy Daybell. On the 19th, Tammy died. And the text messages around this are definitely important to the prosecution. First, we had Lori and Nicole, someone we didn't hear from in Lori's trial, but apparently just a friend, communicated about Tammy's death. So Nicole writes Lori to say, hey, Chad's wife died. And Lori says, oh my gosh, I'm in Hawaii, which Lori was. Lori was not present when Chad's wife died. But then Nicole said, how does that happen? And just 4 minutes later, Lori writes back, oh, well, Tammy woke up at the night. She was coughing. She threw up and then she collapsed and passed away. Really fast information that she learned in a very short 4-minute period of time. And later that day, now, remember, Lori has already been surprised, she said once when Nicole wrote her. Well, another friend writes her, I heard what happened to Chad's wife. Oh my gosh. And Lori writes back, hello, what? Which Lori clearly knew about it, not just knew about it, but knew some details about it. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell marry 17 days after Tammy dies. And Lori writes her son, Colby Ryan, I text Ty, that would be Tylee, to send some money to Colby, her other son. Colby was an adult and no longer lived with her, but I haven't heard back yet. She will probably just do it before she tells me. Hope you got the Venmo. Ty said she sent it late. I'll call you when I get a break. But of course, this was said all on November 22nd. We know that Tylee's last proof of life was all the way back on, no, I believe it was the 8th of September. So Lori is not communicating with Tylee about sending money. All of this was made up. That's what the prosecution is arguing. So let us pull that out and let me talk to y'all a little bit. And I have some people to thank. Oh, thank you, Vicky. Vicky gifted 5 Lawyerly memberships. Thank you for doing that. That membership, you don't have to be a member ever to watch the videos, but it's a way of supporting the channel financially. And we've had a lot of fun with it. So thank you. And I see that Homemade Cupcakes, which sounds pretty darn good, is a new member. So thank you. I'm glad you've joined us. And Robert Bates, thank you for your super sticker. Robert has been such a faithful supporter. I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank Holly Johnson. Thank you. Such a nice group. I appreciate it. And we've got Blessed 1611, who has become a new member. Thank you so much, everybody. So let's see what time it is. 7:28. Let's, you know what? We're going to take a super quick vote. And if thinking, I have about 8 minutes on the blessing, but it'll take me about 50. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. It's really interesting. You will be absolutely fascinated by this. So let's go ahead and put it up there. I've got it all ready to go. And let's listen to what was said. Now, little background. One of the enduring mysteries of the case is what exactly happened to Alex Cox. Just 2 weeks after the patriarchal blessing that you are about to hear from Chad Daybell to Alex, just a couple of weeks later, maybe 3, Alex dies. It was December 12th. It was determined to be of natural causes. No one has been prosecuted. No one is being prosecuted. No investigation is happening into the death of Alex Cox. But a lot of people have wondered. And one of the reasons people wonder is this eerie blessing that he received from Chad just 3 weeks before he died. So I have, as usual, chop, chop, chop. This is much shorter than the whole thing, but I wanted you to hear it.
To begin by opening up the portals of time and going back to your previous creations in which you've lived. I see you on the third creation as a valiant warrior fighting for truth and righteousness, always seeking to do what is right. And you progressed and were selected by the Savior himself to be part of the fourth creation. Great warriors were needed in that creation. Powerful goddesses were needed to be protected, and you were selected to help protect your sister. And you helped her in numerous probations as a defender. You have a special bond even from the premortal world. You connected there. And as she grew in power, you were right there beside her, always. With a humble heart. You both always were so humble.
So, little more setting that I should have been clear about. Present at this blessing, Alex Cox, who's receiving the blessing, Chad Daybell, who's giving it, and Lori Vallow Daybell is also present. You will occasionally hear her speak during the blessing. Interesting word to describe Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. He calls them humble. And he also, and you will hear this over and over throughout this blessing, he refers to Alex Cox as a protector, as a warrior fighting on behalf to protect his sister Lori, and that he has a role in a greater scheme. He's part of something big, something important.
You've already assisted us in ways that can never be repaid. But you will continue to do so.
Now that right there created a lot of questions. What does he mean? How had Alex already assisted them in ways that could never be paid? The prosecution thinks, well, that means the deaths of Tylee and JJ, maybe even the death of Tammy, although there's not proof that Alex was even in the home that night. But as to Tylee and JJ, the prosecution believes Alex was instrumental, was the person perhaps, or at least one of the key people who murdered the two of them. So you have already assisted us in ways that can never be repaid. It becomes kind of a sinister comment if that's true.
I just want you to know that at this time the Savior is saying unto me, well done. Thy soul is cleansed. All is well. And now you'll begin into your terrestrial phase of this existence, that you'll be a powerful servant. I bless you with that knowledge that you'll now move forward as a true warrior in ways that can be demonstrated through not only physical action, but through spiritual power that is coming to you and will be bestowed upon you.
So this thy soul is cleansed statement, all is well. Now you'll begin into your terrestrial phase of this existence. All of that implies a couple of things. First of all, that there might have been a reason why Alex would have had concerns about his soul being dirty. Now, is that simply a reference in general to sin? Is that a reference to murders of Tylee and JJ? We don't know. But the prosecution obviously thinks it's the bigger of the two, that it's the more specific of the two, the murders. They also talk about the transition. Now you'll begin into your terrestrial phase of this existence. You can move forward. And so we begin to, you'll see more of that in the next section.
You will be known throughout the world for your good-heartedness, your willingness to save souls all over the world through portals, and you will begin to gather the souls that come unto Christ. I see you in New Jerusalem, but more importantly, I see you as a messenger of the Lord. Surrounding New Jerusalem will be many small communities where people will come who aren't quite ready to enter those heavenly gates, those terrestrial gates. And one of your missions will be to go among the people and testify as a prophet that they can make it. You'll share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. And through your example, they will rise up. You will give tremendous blessings to them, raise their vibrations, and be like a brother to many of these fathers who may have had doubts, but through your strength, they will look to you as a hero.
So notice that all of these references are to Alex Cox doing these things from the New Jerusalem. This is not on earth. So it has an implication that there's been a change in his status and his being that is now going to be in the future. There was discussion between this group and belief that they could travel through portals. Chad and Lori talked about how they traveled through portals. I think Chad's was in his closet, I guess, where Tammy wouldn't notice. And they would travel to see each other through these portals. So it could mean that he's simply saying you're going to travel to the New Jerusalem through a portal. But the question is, does this contemplate that Alex Cox is going to die soon? And we'll hear more about this.
And you'll bring entire families that have been sanctified to the gates of New Jerusalem, and they will be allowed in on your word.
So notice what Chad is dangling in front of Alex: power, greatness, going to the New Jerusalem, which we're not really clear exactly what that means, but it sounds, in at least in traditional Christian religion, that's the new creation. That is something that happens after this life, or at least after the return of Christ. So what exactly do they mean by this? We don't know, but a lot of really powerful things are being dangled in front of Alex, and he's being told about these in the course of this blessing.
With your companion, you'll communicate with Mother Earth herself. You'll know where to be before natural disasters happen, that you can be on location to protect key leaders, church leaders, and to preserve who should survive. Little children, I see you gathering up little children in your arms, saving them from floodwaters.
That is particularly chilling in light of what Alex Cox is said to have done. The vision Chad has for him is that he would gather up little children and save them from the floodwaters. And according to the allegations in this complaint, Alex conspired with Chad and Lori to actually kill little children, JJ and Tylee. So the contrast between the blessing and what the accusations are is just huge. Notice too that there's talk about Alex actually having supernatural powers, that he could know where to be before natural disasters happen. He could be on location to protect church leaders, key leaders, and then he replaces that with church leaders. He could save people.
And you will be looked upon as an angel on earth. You will literally glow for those who are allowed to see you. And those mortals who aren't allowed to see that will know through the spirit of the great power you possess.
So greatness, prestige, that he would be admired, all of these things are part of the blessing. And even if not connected to the death of Alex Cox, and we're going to hear another section in just a minute that has led to a lot of suspicion, on the part of people who question whether or not there was a connection to the death. But even if there is no connection to Alex Cox's death, he is named as a co-conspirator. And the prosecution believes that these sorts of promises, not just in the blessing, but even before that, of eternal fame and glory, of his noble calling to protect his sister Lori and to protect Chad secondarily, that these were how he was persuaded to kill.
You will know when it's time to move to the other side. This body that has served you well will lay down one day, and you'll pass. Your spirit will leave this body, and you'll be greeted wholeheartedly and welcomed by the Savior himself. The Savior will let that body rest a day or two, and much like himself, you will be raised and be resurrected, so that when the Savior does return, you will be right at the front of that amazing team of angels who will sweep the earth.
So I will say this, Chad seems very emotional during the course of this. Either he's a phenomenal actor or he feels very deeply about what he's talking about. I'm curious about your opinions about that. Does it humanize him? Does it make it, do you think he's faking it? Sort of, what are your thoughts? I'd be interested in your, put those in the chat or the comments if you would. So this comment to Alex that you will know when it's time to move to the other side, about your body that served you well will lay down one day and you'll pass. All of this comes just 3 weeks before Alex Cox actually dies, supposedly of natural causes. There's also the talk about the Savior letting his body rest for a day or two and then resurrecting it. It could be then that Alex Cox believed that even if he died from whatever method, that he believed he would be resurrected. Now, the night before, he did say to his wife, and we haven't heard that in testimony yet, but we know this from Lori's trial. He did say to her, I just hope I'm not Chad's and Lori's fall guy, something along those lines. And then the very next day, he died. Supposedly, though, as I say again, of natural causes.
At that time, you and Holly will still have assignments here temporarily, but then you'll move forward. She's already preparing a world for you two, and you will be able to be an eternal family with eternal children on that earth. And the glory will just continue for you out, on and on through eternity. You will be a patriarch in your own home. You will give blessings similar to this. Your veil will be essentially gone. You will be able to see into the past and into the future for these individuals and share with them the same type of knowledge and truth. You have 9 angels assigned to you now to watch you from all sides through your faithfulness. I know you will stay faithful. You have a great mission. I protect you. I bless you with a strong protection against Satan and his followers, Lucifer, Cain. I close this patriarchal blessing by assuring you that you will rise to an eternal glory and that you will have an eternal family and that your exaltation is assured through your faithfulness. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
So there you have it, the patriarchal blessing, at least an excerpt of it from Chad to Alex. And you can see in that final section that I played, there's essentially a promise of sort of a godlike existence for Alex Cox in the future, that he will be, his veil will be gone. He'll be able to see into the past and the future, that he will be able to give blessings himself. He'll have an eternal family with eternal children on the earth. And all of this is being prepared for him. And he is going to receive protection through all of this, through all of what he is about to do. Now, on cross-examination, the Chad Daybell's attorney, John Pryor, pointed out a few things. First of all, after it was more than 2 weeks after this that Alex Cox died. So it isn't as if this was the night before, final blessing right before your death. Alex didn't die for 2 more weeks. So there was a separation in time. Chad's team also pointed out, John Pryor pointed out that Alex was determined to have died of natural causes. As I said, there was nothing suspicious about it, according to what authorities thought at the time. They also pointed out that Alex Cox was buying cheaper prescription drugs across the border in Mexico, that he was going there to get prescription drugs, and suggesting, well, maybe something was wrong with those. Maybe that's why he died. Maybe it had nothing to do with some strange and undiscoverable, undetectable way that he managed to kill himself in order to help Lori and Chad to do their bidding. John Pryor also pointed out, well, there's nothing criminal about giving a blessing. Many people might consider it a great thing. And as you move forward, he said to the witness, in the LDS religion, you become a god or goddess. There's nothing strange about it. The Mormon faith believes that you do become a god or goddess as you move forward. And then Alex and Lori were, quote, oddly close. The witness said he didn't know about that, he or she, I can't remember who was on the stand at this point, but we are going to hear more about the relationship between Alex and Lori. They were very close. And remember, Chad Daybell is essentially saying, look, I didn't have anything to do with this. This was Lori and Alex, and it was Lori and Alex over and over again. It was Lori and Alex with her third husband. It was Lori and Alex with her fourth husband. It was Lori and Alex with her children, that over and over, they reached out, assaulted, killed people. I wasn't involved in it. That's the defense that he is making. So I am going to take a look. If you would, go ahead and put questions in. If you have any, put question marks at the beginning. And let me head over here and say, Mr. RN wants to know, do you think Alex unalived himself? I do. I don't know how it was done. That's just my personal opinion. And I don't base that on any fact, really. I just base that on sort of the circumstances, the strange circumstances that at a very young age, he suddenly passed. But I don't base that on any finding of an autopsy or any finding from law enforcement, because they don't think that. So I'm just basing that on nothing. And thank you, Leona. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, all right. So Shirley is suggesting, and she may well be right, if you want the accurate story of the origins and facts of a patriarchal blessing, then hit me up. Mr. Pryor got it all wrong. I had steam coming out of my ears from nonsensical speculations. Yeah, and I think one of the things that John Pryor has said over and over is, hey, I don't know anything about the Mormon faith. I don't know anything about what's going on here. I'm just telling you what I've heard or learned or been told. And so he says that, and the witness, frankly, the witness knew nothing more than he did. He did do a pretty sufficient cross-examination, I thought. The witness had said, oh, this is part of the Mormon faith about something. And he said, really? Well, do you know this, and this, and this? And the witness like, no, I don't know anything about any of those things. So I think John Pryor did successfully show that the witness, who also was not Mormon, also did not know about it. So Shirley knows, I am sure, way more than either John Pryor or I do about exactly what the origins and facts of the patriarchal blessing are. So thanks for pointing that out, Shirley, because that is sort of an unknown thing. When it comes to religion, it's very difficult to have a real understanding of what someone else believes. That is true. Okay, Todd Moore thinks that he really believes this stuff, but convinced himself he had a power and mission because he was chosen. Definitely, I think that that's true. His prayers are ominous. He kneels. He was manipulating. I think that he was. S. Cipher asks, doesn't this show that Chad had a part in this? Well, that's exactly what is being argued by the prosecution. They're using these emails, these texts, this blessing to say Chad is in the middle of this group, not just in the middle. That's not even strong enough. Chad is in charge of this group. So when this group acts on his beliefs, acts on his belief that someone is dark, that someone has become a zombie, that the only way to remove that is to kill the body, that he's part and parcel of it. They don't act without him. So that's one of the things the prosecution is arguing. Okay, let's see. Next question. Vandy Muss wants to know, do you think he was poisoned by CD, Chad Daybell? I have no idea. When I say that, how I feel, it's just more of a speculation, a thought. There are no facts on which I base that. And I don't know who did it or how he did it or exactly why. Maxine, is Lori being protected in the Arizona prison from the other women? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if she's in isolation or if she's been put in the general population, Maxine. I don't really know. I assume she's in jail since she's awaiting trial. So I don't know exactly where she is, though. Brenda Mosel asked me, how is your husband? So, let me switch that. He is not, he's maybe a little better, but they have not got it all figured out yet. They are working on an antibiotic and hoping, to find one that works better than what it's happening right now. So the answer is not better, but working. Well, okay, a little bit better, but not like so far from well. So we are really hoping for a better antibiotic and for things to turn around. So thank you for asking. And I want to say that to so many of you. I got so many comments and chat messages. I got emails. I just thank you. I really appreciate your concern and your interest in him. And thank you a lot for that. I appreciate it. Josephina wants to know about Chad's kids. Do any of them doubt his innocence, or will they doubt it through the trial? Such an interesting question, Josephina. All five went on to 48 hours, sat there in chairs, defended their dad. Some more than others, but all five were present and all five participated in defending him. So do I think that any of them have turned? The only thing John Pryor, Chad's lawyer, said 3 or 4 would come to trial. That doesn't mean any of them have changed their minds. It just could mean that they are busy. I've heard one of them is on a mission trip with the Mormon church, so maybe he's just not available. So I don't have any reason to think they've changed their mind. Okay, so Scrambled Egg wants to know about Tammy and Alex and pink foam in their mouth at their death. Do I think that had anything to do with them being poisoned or murdered? I can't really say about Alex because I don't know about the pink foam. Certainly it would be something if they both did. But I don't have any sense of how he died because there was no belief that it had anything to do with murder or unaliving. Nothing. There was just nothing that made authorities think there was anything unusual about it. So I just have to go with, I don't know. Okay, Carolyn Burnett. Thank you. I appreciate the super sticker. Thank you very much. And Atticus wants to know, while watching the body cam footage with Emma and Chad, did you find it curious that Emma said she had been talking to Lori? And also asked about the hubby. So thank you, Atticus. And what Atticus is talking about is the body cam footage of Chad being arrested. He had handcuffs on. He was sitting in the back of a patrol car. They had just found the body of JJ in the backyard / field. And they were about to find the body of Tylee as well. And at this point, Emma, his daughter, is talking to him through the open door and saying she loves him. And one of the things Chad said was, you probably could talk to Lori as well. At least that's how I remember it. and he said, I've been putting money on her account, $30 every week. So if you could keep doing that, that would be good because I'm about to go to jail and I won't be able to do it anymore. And you may be able to talk to her, something along those lines. So I don't remember her saying she had been talking to Lori, but I easily could have missed that. It wasn't always that easy to tell what people were saying. I did hear her, Chad, tell her she could talk to Lori, that she might want to talk to Lori. We know that Chad introduced Lori to his kids. They all went to Disney World together, Disneyland together, and they knew that they were married, so it wasn't a secret. So that's about all I have to say about Emma. And thank you, Dr. Weezy J. I appreciate the super sticker. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll answer just a couple more questions. And Sue, I may have skipped some, and my apologies, but Sue asked me, do we know what type of prescription drugs Alex was buying? I don't think we know. I don't think we have any idea. There was reference to it, and the witness simply said he had heard that or did know that Alex had been doing that, but there were no specific details about what kind of drug or whether it might have been contaminated or whether there was any attempt to figure out whether it was contaminated. Because if there were still pills there, they might contest them. But as far as we know, that didn't happen. Oh, BC Girl says John Pryor deliberately called it a parochial blessing instead of a patriarchal blessing. And wants to know if that's purposeful. I missed that. That is really interesting, BC Girls. I did not notice that. I would guess it was not deliberate. I don't know. Really interesting question. But I didn't hear it, so I can't really speak to it. I wonder how many, can you tell me how many times he said that? Was it just once and maybe it was an accident? Okay, so I'm looking for questions. I'm looking for the question mark at the beginning because that helps me find them. And we'll do like one or two more. Annie K, isn't Pryor making a mistake, constantly pointing out in cross all the people related to Lori Vallow, whom Chad Bell did not eliminate, if he did any offing? Well, and Annie K, I assume you're referring to Melanie, to David Warwick, to Zulema, to some of the people who are going to testify against Chad at this trial. I think this is the thinking behind it because, and I think I'm going to do a whole video on this because John Pryor is really setting Melanie up as being at the heart of this, in the thick of it, being there when JJ was killed, and sort of asking the question, why is law enforcement, why is the prosecution going after Chad Daybell when you will see Melanie Gibb just waltz in here scot-free, never been charged, no one even thinking of charging her? Why? Why that? Because Chad wasn't with them the night that JJ died, whereas Melanie was there. So I think it's a really interesting argument. On the one hand, does it really help Chad? Because just implicating Melanie doesn't mean Chad wasn't involved. It could be they were both involved. That's still possible. But I think one of the reasons that they are talking so much about Melanie is it's going to set the jury up. When she walks in, the jury is really going to be looking at her and thinking, what did you know? And I think it's going to cause them to have a lot of questions about whether or not they really believe what she says. And that's what John Pryor is going for. That's what I think is happening. I think he's pointing out these names to say, hey, watch these people because they may be involved in murder. And if he can get the jury to think that, to buy into what he's saying, they may doubt the testimony that is coming against Chad. And I want to say thank you to Carol. I appreciate that. Very generous super sticker. Thank you so much. So, and Karen is talking about people getting brainwashed. I don't think that that is a question, but I understand her concern or point about that. And I'm looking for my last question here. And Dixie Doodles is talking about conspiracy to murder. Chad is charged both with murder and with conspiracy to murder. He's got both sets of charges that the prosecution is trying to prove. So yes, conspiracy would pull in Alex and Lori. They're deemed to be co-conspirators, but he's also charged with murder. So we will wait and see exactly how that all gets argued in closing arguments. And final one, Ellie Grant saying, do you know if the kids were given blessings? Interesting question. And I don't know. I don't know how often he did this. Maybe he did this all the time. Maybe he regularly gave patriarchal blessings. I know that one of the suggestions was that he didn't have the authority to give a blessing, that he was not at the level within the church that he had the power to do that. You had to be at a certain level, and he wasn't there. He was outside the church, off on his own tangent, is what the argument was when he gave this blessing. So as far as what we were going to do the rest of the week, as you know, we were going to go live every day, Monday through Friday. We normally do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. With hubby being in the hospital and pretty sick, I don't know for sure that I'll be able to do that. I didn't go live last night, and I'm not sure about tomorrow night. If I can, I would love to go live. It's fun, and it gives me something to do while I'm sitting there at the hospital to think about other than, just worry. So I would really appreciate your thoughts about that. And I definitely will go live, or at least I'll plan to, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I hope I'll be able to go live tomorrow. We're going to try to cover both the Karen Reed trial and also the Chad Daybell trial, because they're both absolutely fascinating and really important. With the Karen Reed trial, I really had some stuff to say to you about the motions, because the court is ruling on some really critical pieces of evidence. If they don't come in, it could change what the jury sees, what they perceive about the case. So I will see y'all for sure on Friday. Watch for tomorrow, and I'll try to put out an announcement about whether I can go live at 7 p.m. And I will look forward to seeing y'all for sure on Friday, and maybe even tomorrow. Prosecution showed it to jury. And thank you to Marlon and Mama Pinks, our moderators. And so you can get a pretty good look at it too. Red blood-like substance on it. He said it was even wet and leaking everywhere. That was a quote. Zip ties, a razor blade. Why were these items there? And in the back window is a bobblehead of Alec Murdaugh going back and forth.